to you, the panelists, and also ask them to introduce themselves, of course. And naturally, we start with ladies first. So I'd like to introduce you Wieske Ebbe from the Dutch Central Bank, and ask her to introduce herself briefly, and also talk to us a little bit about what do you see as a goal of regulating Bitcoin.
Right, thank you for having this panel. I'm really happy to be here. I work at the Dutch Central Bank at the Payments Policy Department, so I'm a policy advisor. And I look at all the new developments in payments, and of course one of them is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is one that stands outside all the other innovations. You have the payment systems that we all know, and then you have Bitcoin. So we really see that as something separate. And then the question is, of course, for us, what do you see as the goal of regulating Bitcoin? For us, it's not something that we think, oh God, it's something new, we have to regulate it, this is not good or anything. At first we thought, well, we'll see what's happening with it, it's not very big yet. We don't encourage people to put their savings money all in Bitcoin. Because, well, there are some securities or safety guards that we cannot ensure, which we can in regular payment system. But what we see happening is very interesting, and I don't think that I'm very sure, we cannot regulate Bitcoin, of course. But we do. It's not the system, it's not something we can regulate, it's something separate than the regular system. So, but we have some goals, of course, as a central bank. We have to ensure financial stability, have to have safe and reliable and efficient payment systems, and those are our goals, our objectives, and if we see that Bitcoin maybe contribute to that, or it has the opposite effect, then we will look at what we should or could do about it. So it may sound a bit vague, but that's what it is right now. So I hope I gave you some clarity already.
Thank you, Wieske. We will have time after everybody has introduced themselves. We will start the discussion, and we also strongly encourage you to also participate in the room. We have a microphone also which will be going around. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Next, Niels Ploeger from the Amsterdam police. I don't see anybody running out right now, so I think we're good. Niels, in your job at the police department, how do you view Bitcoin? Why your interest?
Well, let me first introduce myself. I'm Niels Ploeger. I work for the Amsterdam Police Department. I'm dealing with financial economic crimes, and I'm currently involved in research on new payment methods. So that's why I came across Bitcoin. As you all know and saw in previous presentations, Bitcoin is also being used by criminals, for example, for the sale and trading on torrent marketplaces, like drugs and weapons and other illicit goods. Also, Bitcoin is being used for extortion, for example. I guess, a lot of my colleagues, they kind of fear Bitcoin because of the technical issues and the problems with seizure, of Bitcoins. I personally encourage the Bitcoin community to come up with some kind of measures to make it less attractive to be used by criminals. And I think that Bitcoin, how do you say that? Mass adoption of Bitcoin will be much easier if regulation is in place. I mean, we can expect that most people who are not really into technical stuff, they will probably use online wallets, and if you want to make sure that you use an online wallet with a trusted party, then I guess regulation isn't necessary evil. So, but yeah, I mean, we come across various types of crime in which Bitcoin is involved, and I hope that we can fight it without discouraging the use of Bitcoin by the regular people.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Niels. Joerg, you're from the Crypto Economics Consulting Group. You also have a connection with the Bitcoin Foundation. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that as well.
Just lost that connection.
Oh, yeah. We didn't have enough votes. Okay. What is your view as an expert on the development of the Bitcoin economy on regulation? Is it a good thing, a bad thing? How do you view this?
Yeah, well, I just got introduced. My name is Joerg from CCG in Berlin. The question is, what kind of regulation does Bitcoin need, if any? I'd say Bitcoin does not precisely need a regulation, whereas regulation on some levels can now be of advantage for the ecosystem. Let me elaborate on that. We need to look at the issue on several levels. One level is, and I would call it the tip of the iceberg that regulators now can see. These businesses like exchanges or like money transmitters like BitPay and that kind of business. Of course, one can regulate these businesses. Is it possible? Is it necessary? I don't know, but what I know is that that is of advantage for the Bitcoin ecosystem right now, just merely for the fact that it gives a lot of legitimacy to Bitcoin for people who would otherwise still be scared because they don't understand the whole thing. So I totally appreciate what the Fidor Bank and Bitcoin.de, for example, are doing in Germany. Another level is regulation on protocol level of Bitcoin. It is, in my opinion, absolutely impossible to regulate Bitcoin on that level. The only possibility that Bitcoin would be regulated there would be on a political level, and that would mean that the whole Bitcoin economy, or at least 51%, would be convinced that we need certain functions in the protocol that regulators in the end will demand, like reversible transactions or blacklisting or whitelisting or something like that. Now, I don't think this can happen, but theoretically it could, if, I don't know, the whole community would be convinced. And there is another level yet, and that is not only Bitcoin, but cryptocurrency as a whole. So, in my opinion, if it would be possible to regulate Bitcoin the way I've just described it, it is clear that the next cryptocurrency around the corner would put up, which is much more resilient against blacklisting, whitelisting, reversible transactions, and that kind of stuff. So, looking at the whole picture, I don't see much point in regulating Bitcoin. It's a bit like, I keep bringing up this example of the printing press. The printing press took away the monopoly over the contents of books from the church. Of course, one could have sit together back then and go like, how can we now regulate this printing press that this Gutenberg guy made? And it would have been possible to technically take that machine and turn it into something that can only print Bibles and only in Latin language. But that would have meant that in the next basement, the next person would have made the next printing press that does not have these restrictions. So if you look at the whole chain backwards, then it means there is not much point in regulating Bitcoin. But it is, I see regulating exchanges and money transmitters now as a kind of the regulated jumping board into unregulated waters.
Thank you, thank you. I saw already a few people in the room wanting to raise their hand. Please give a little bit more time to the other two panelists to introduce themselves, and then we will open the room up for questions. Casper, Riekerk, you're a lawyer at Finnius. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how do you think Bitcoin fits into the current financial laws of the Netherlands and the EU.
Right. Casper, Riekerk, partner at Finnius law firm. This is a law firm especially dealing with only supervisory law. That's what we do all day. May sound a bit boring, but we think it's fun. And as regards to Bitcoin, The Bitcoin itself isn't regulated. I think there's no real discussion about that. It gets interesting when people start providing services in relation to an exchange of Bitcoin or trading facilities or payment methods. And if doing so, there is no difference between such activities and, for instance, platforms where you change euros for dollars, etc. So I think I have the same approach as Joerg, whereas where it comes to the additional services, then you should take care, and that's not just in terms of financial regulation, but also in terms of tax. It's about the activities itself, not the fact that you use bitcoins. It's about the activities itself which make you come across all kinds of regulation.
Okay, thank you, Casper. And finally, we have Michael Maier from Fidor Bank. So, one of the Wieske is also, of course, from a bank, but you're from an actual consumer bank. What to you are the main benefits and risks for a bank to offer Bitcoin services?
Yeah, thanks first having me here. Being from Munich, this is a tough season coming here because of Oktoberfest. So please excuse my voice a little bit. I'm doing the best. Yeah, what Fidor Bank is a bank, is a young bank. We are 3 years old now. We are Web 2.0, based on the principles of the Web 2.0, and therefore our target group are digital natives. So if our target groups are digital natives, Bitcoin is something which is created out of the digital natives and of the Web 2.0 approach. So we regard Bitcoins a kind of an asset the customers have in these days. Another asset could be miles, air miles. Another asset is gold, is silver, or euros, or whatever. Money is what counts for the customer. And therefore, because we are a digital bank, we said, okay, if somebody is regarding Bitcoin as a currency, or as an asset, or as a value storage, or as a payment scheme, we, as a new bank, have to take care of them and offer our customers a possibility to go or to trade within cooperation of Bitcoin.de, for instance, Bitcoins. Why not? So for us, the main advantage is clear positioning. We are another bank. We might get new customers on that. We want to enable with our partners and via an API that within a bank account in the financial status, your current Bitcoin status could be visible. So we are more a platform. On the other hand, the risk is clear. I mean, the construct in Germany is right now that we have our partner as a tied agent, which means this is a regulatory shelter of kind of a contract broking. Therefore, all of the employees of Bitcoin.de are regarded as bank employees. So the biggest risk is, as in other bank, in a branch or whatever, that one employee is doing something what he shouldn't do. So it's like what we talked before. Is it a Bitcoin crime or is it a US dollar crime? It's always the crime. So the risk is mainly, partly maybe out of some negative press or reputation risk, but this is, I think, we can take right now.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So, I want to open it up to the audience. Any questions to any of our panelists, or to the panel as a whole? Here in the front.
Hi, yeah, I've got a question for Niels, especially. So you mentioned that you've seen cases where Bitcoin is used in extortion cases. It's obviously pretty concerning. What I was thinking, do you ever see this happen with regular bank accounts as well, where people are told to wire money to this account, and then someone comes and takes it out as cash, and it's like a hacked account? Because I know like bank accounts get hacked pretty often. So I was wondering if you've ever seen anything like that as well.
So if I can interpret a little bit, what do you see happening with Bitcoin used by criminals, and how does it relate to criminals using regular payment methods as well, such as it's a hacking?
Like compare them?
Well, I mean, because because transactions are irreversible, right? So it's actually beneficial for cyber criminals to use Bitcoin as a way to move the money around from bank transfers, for example. When it comes to extortion, I mean, the same thing applies, right? I mean, if you are extorted and you pay through Bitcoin, it's much more difficult to trace where it's going or who's behind the transaction. But I have to admit that currently there are not so many cases that are involved with Bitcoin other than the sale of illicit goods through Tor marketplaces. And there are also some kind of cybercrime cases in which the money of victims is being transferred from their bank accounts to Bitcoin exchangers. But we have to build more knowledge on that, because I think that personally that the police is always 2 steps behind, right? So we need to invest more on the digital research, computers that we seizure and seize. So yeah.
Do you feel you have the right contacts in the Bitcoin community to do that?
Well, personally, I'm not doing any cases. I'm just doing research on phenomena. But I do see that a lot of colleagues, they also have interest in Bitcoin, more as in how does it work, what can we do as a police officer do with it when it comes to tracing the money or finding traces, digital traces, and there are a lot of questions basically also about the technical issues, and maybe it would be a good idea to connect with the Bitcoin community, but yeah, I mean, law enforcement is always a bit protected when it comes to their intel, so I'm not sure whether it will happen or not, but we have, for example, contact with InnoPay, so maybe through that channel it would be a possibility as well, so. But it's difficult.
Joerg, you also wanted to respond?
Yeah, no, not respond, but ask a question to law enforcement or to police. I personally wonder, as a policeman, is one not happy about Silk Road? Because, no, honestly, I believe Red Pirate Roberts said that the other day, Silk Road has actually won the war on drugs already. I mean, if you look at it, what you have there now, you have in there a system where drug dealers do not compete with each other with guns in dark street alleys or something, but where you have thousands of vendors, of retailers who compete with each other by quality, service, reputation. This is what's happening. These people are not shooting each other. These people are selling up. Also, the profits made from drugs are not going to 2 or 3 big global cartels. They are distributed to thousands of small vendors. And yeah, so this takes a lot of the friction out of these crimes. So I was wondering, as police.
Well, you're assuming, of course, that people who trade on those marketplaces, that they don't trade in the streets anymore.
I don't know.
So, I mean, that will probably depend on case, but I do think it's more of a political issue, whether you think that drugs is legal or not, or whether it should be sold on those marketplaces, or if it's allowed or not. I mean, it's not up to me to decide, and I think as long as it's illegal, that for law enforcement, it's a problem that on Tor marketplaces, such trade is being taking place, you know, and we should do something about it, or you should say that, well, we encourage it to be used or to be traded on those marketplaces because it's more regulated and more, better quality maybe, better competition, whatever could be, but then you have to make it legal.
I mean, I imagine that drug cartels are probably on top of the list of the people who will hate Bitcoin for that, because they lose their monopolies.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, I don't know enough about it, but there could be a possibility that the trading that happens on Tor marketplaces is just a small fraction that's actually being traded around the globe. Maybe it's more like individual sellers, you know, that they're making this like pocket money, and not necessarily like big schemes that are behind it, just individual sellers. And so I'm not sure if they're like a real competition for drug cartels or.
It will be, I guess. Anyhow, thanks.
Okay, we had a question up here at the front. technical difficulties.
Yeah, that's wrong. I have a question for Wieske. Yeah. I wanted to know what's the political atmosphere in the central banks, because potential scenario for Bitcoin is that it will sooner or later just overtake fiat currency, right? It can just eliminate any national currency, right? I was wondering what's the mood around there, what are your opinions about this?
Well, that could be a case. I don't see it happening quite soon, I believe, but well, we'll see about that in a few years. But we do look at it from different angles, of course. At the central bank in the Netherlands, we're both supervisor and central bank. So we look at from the payments part, we look at from supervision on financial institutions, we look at money laundering and everything that has to do with money and payments. So that's why, like I just said, well, you cannot regulate Bitcoin or the system itself. That's true, of course, but all the other levels, like you also said, you could do something about that, and we are looking at it if that is necessary. And what could we do about it? It's not very clear yet. I mean, some central banks or supervisions or governments have already said, well, we are going to regulate the exchanges, or we're not allowed to receive any Bitcoins. For us, we're definitely looking into it. We don't want to make a bold statement yet.
I'd also like to know Michael's opinion on the same question, actually. Maybe your bank, you deal in euros as well as Bitcoins currently. Is dealing in Bitcoins partially also kind of a hedge against the disappearance of the euro, or do you expect to be in the euro for the time being?
It's just according to my voice. Sorry, no, definitely not. I think this is, I have to clarify on that. We are not holding Bitcoins as a bank. The Bitcoins are still stored within the platform. We just are sheltering our license to the exchange, which I'm with Joerg is exactly for the mass market approach, which I followed the panel before very interestingly. I think Bitcoin is in the beginning, and it's kind of branding, and branding is always something which is trust. And of course, negative press is press, but it's not good for trust. And maybe because of then regulating something like that, you implement rules which in exactly other business segments like FX trading are completely natural, are transferred to the Bitcoin case. It's nothing else. And that's creating trust, that's all I say. And this has nothing to do with the euro, this has nothing to do with the Bitcoin. And I guess we're happy, we're a free country, and we could choose whatever currency you want. So we don't store Bitcoin, we just shelter it, and we may, maybe a little sooner or later, try really to have real-time trading, but using the payment facility of a bank, of a closed money loop, to transfer the real money behind Bitcoin to enable faster trading, like they do it in discount brokers anyhow. But this has nothing to do with currency hedge or something like that.
It was a bit of a leading question.
I do my best.
A question here?
Yes. The question is for Joerg, whom I think in this panel has the best streetwise experience of what is the actual impact of Bitcoin. You're the first one running a business between actual brick walls. Well, I'm born in Italy, and one of the things that I can observe in the regulation, the impact of regulation in a field that is also concerning us, the one of gaming, of card games, of kind of casino games, was that when regulation came in Italy with a new law around 2005 or 6, it was quite a disaster, especially in south of Italy, where there is this tradition of playing cards in bars. So when regulation came, people were not anymore allowed to open the tables. You know, I'm talking about retired old men that are really affectionate about their playing those games.
Physically.
And physically. And what became apparent is that all these places that actually gathered these people, they started having these slot machines, these electronic slot machines. The dream of the regulators was that through the digitalization of these kind of games, they were able to actually track what people were doing. So what happened is very quickly is that the actual mafia, I'm talking about the real one, was quickly owning most of the businesses that were producing and distributing these poker machines. And now we are left into a situation that the financial police in Italy is investigating in the last 2 years with many difficulties in which it's really hard to actually distribute where those funds are going. And on the ground what happened is that the people are not anymore able to actually meet face to face and play their little coin game. So my question to you is, if you have in your setups people that are conquering back this dimension of actually playing the game, setting up a table, because my impression is that also many of the Bitcoin poker players out there, and they are many, they are also brilliant programmers, what they really wanted was actually to set up their own table, not to have a company that was opaque to their perception of a business and of a game to hold their fishes. So I'm wondering if you observe this impact into the gaming, the street gaming practices. People are getting back or will get back to actually owning the tables they play on.
I don't quite get the question now.
If you have people coming in your pub playing games.
No, we don't. But it's just probably a cultural thing in Berlin, Kreuzberg. People don't play cards in restaurants or bars. So I cannot talk about this. But I would like to actually take the question and divert it into one to the central bank. Sorry, to Wieske. Because if I may...
I'm talking like a true consultant, I can tell you true.
No, hold on, because this is just the right starting point where you go. The government wanted to make sure that they know about and take part of every gambling, of every act of gambling, every transaction. And this is where my question to the regulators were, where I have to admit that you took some wind out of my sails so far by stating that yes, we want to regulate Bitcoin businesses, but one cannot regulate the Bitcoin infrastructure. Now, I'm only learning about regulation, but as far as I have learned, regulators always want 100% control over something. They are not satisfied with 50% or something, they are not satisfied with 99%. Regulation means, especially financial regulation, I believe its goal is for governments to be aware of every transaction that is taking place worldwide, being able to stop any transaction they wish to stop, and being able to confiscate money wherever they want to confiscate money. And that's where I'm like, now if you go like, okay, we're going to only regulate some businesses, but the rest, right, I don't think we can regulate it, that would actually mean that the regulators already gave up. No, honestly, no, because that's the unregulated waters I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay, yeah, well, it is something that we, I think, well, I cannot speak for every regulator, of course, but it is something difficult here. It's a very new situation, this Bitcoin system, as I call it. And of course we want to see everything and confiscate money if we... It's kind of difficult, so we have to see what can we do, what can't we do.
The cards are really coming on the table.
Okay.
No, but it is a different situation. Because with all the new payment methods or technology or anything that's been happening in the past years, well, there is always a way to fit it into the regular system, or it came out of the regular system, whatever. It had a good connection, and now it's something completely different. So that it's just a very interesting issue, of course, for us as well.
Okay.
I'd also like to ask something similar to Casper, because you have years of experience with working with supervisors in the financial area. Do you have, how do you see them looking at Bitcoin? Do they have enough knowledge to have a good impression of what Bitcoin means? Personally, I see quite a lot of fear of the unknown, for example, in the political arena around this.
Yep, that's exactly right. Over the years we've seen rounds somewhere in the south of the Netherlands. There was in the east of the Netherlands Gelder, which is also not virtual, but a local currency. And the day those type of currencies appear in the street, so to speak, then regulators get a bit annoyed to just understand what's happening here. On the other hand, regulators are facilitating and not they're not here for themselves. We have certain rules of society, and especially when it comes to the regulator, he is entitled in his task to assess risks and address risks, and that's exactly what's on the table. So it's not a battle between government and Bitcoin believers. It's about assessing risk, and if there's with trading with Bitcoins a true risk, then I think it's in everybody's interest to have to address, because if you don't take that step, it will just be some small virtual currency and stay the way it is over the years to come, and that would be a shame.
Well, I think we can all agree on that.
I've got a question to ask you already, so.
Yeah, give the microphone to someone else. Come on.
I have a question, also to this thing, sorry, but not necessarily only. What is concerning me is that, in fact, we have several persons have mentioned the notion of risk. Now, we must admit that the whole existing payment system is something relatively old, not necessarily completely well-functioning, and it's related to companies which are called too big to fail. Now, what I'm wondering is that when you see living organisms, they very often have this notion of resilience. Resilience means you have two lungs, you can live with one. Now, is it not in the interest of society, I'm not saying of banks, I'm saying of society, to see alternative concepts of payment system developing, which do not aim at dominance, but which just aim at resilience?
Well, that depends on what society wants, of course. I do have to say that if you look at, for instance, local currencies, you see that they have real value in those local communities, for instance. So we do see that, and it's not something that we think, oh God, it should be gone or anything. It has very good value. Maybe there will be more of these currencies, like Bitcoin and other virtual currencies, that do have value in itself. If it would contribute to the resilience of the system, I don't know. I don't see it. Yeah. I'm not sure if that would be, if Bitcoin would have, or any other virtual currency would have that potential to do that. I'm not sure. I cannot say anything about that. But yeah, if we, our interest as a central bank is that the payment systems is safe and trustworthy. People trust it, and for us that's the important thing. If we have a system, which we have now with euros, and you can pay with it, you can open a bank account, and you can transfer money. For us, it's very important that people trust it. And if there's another currency which people trust, that's also good. But if one currency would maybe, for any reason, I don't know, maybe criminal activities, whatever, would harm that trust in the other, in the euro, I mean, that would be not so very good. I mean, that's something we'll probably do something about. But I'm not saying how, I'm not sure about that. But for us, trust is the most important thing. Like Casper said, I think I completely underline what he said. But if virtual currencies or other currencies, if they can really make sure that the whole system is resilient, I'm not sure. We'll have to see.
Thank you, Wieske. We have time for one or two more questions.
Can I step in? Regarding financial stability around the world, at the moment we have the US dollar being the world trade currency. Now, as you know, the American Federal Reserve Bank has been going on their quantitative easing program for a while now, and no one can really see an exit strategy for what they're doing. So this is causing some potential danger in the long term for world trade, because with the current environment of currency wars that's taking place, where Japan is printing money, America is printing money, don't you think that the currency with a non-elastic money supply like Bitcoin would provide a better tool when it comes to world trade, rather than currency like US dollar that can be printed on and on and on, and then leading to inflation or hyperinflation in the future?
Bit of a leading question, I think, but if anyone to answer that?
Is that question pointed at somebody personally?
The central bank, but really that's the financial stability is about the central bank.
It's true. Well, I'm sorry, I cannot really respond to your question. I don't think, for now, I don't think it's my job to say, well, Bitcoin will solve all the issues in the world and all the monetary issues, so let's switch to that. I don't think that will happen.
Sorry. One more thing.
So it's a question actually for the audience. Can I see a show of hands, please? I mean, we're talking about risk and criminal organizations and so on. Does it seem a little bit, I don't know, confusing to us that, say, the reason that Bitcoin came into existence, or one of the main reasons, is that the traditional banking system and governments and compliance and regulatory systems seem a little bit broken, and then who are the real criminals here? So on which we've seen that, and this may or may not be representative of the rest of the world, but the question comes back to you. What are you guys doing to regulate yourselves so that Bitcoin doesn't need to exist anymore?
Thank you. Anybody want to respond? It was a bit more of a statement than a question, I guess.
Yes, I have a question for Ms. Ebbe. You talked about trust being one of the most important factors when evaluating a new payment system. My company, BitPay, we make it easy for businesses to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. Side by side with credit cards and anything else they do. The feedback that we've gotten is that Bitcoin is the most trustworthy and most counterfeit-proof form of payment inbound that they could possibly receive. Because every payment is irreversible, every payment is considered final, and it's all public record on the blockchain, that transaction took place. So when you're looking at evaluating your stance, one of the things that is interesting to us is how can startups and entrepreneurs offer more services around Bitcoin, because it is the most counterfeit-proof form of money and payment ever invented. There are a lot of ideas. There are a lot of startups that want to create companies, and governments are in a position where they can be accommodative to startups and innovation and job creation. And I wanted to see what your stance is on that.
Now, I really understand that Bitcoin can add value in payments, in online payments. But as regulators, we're always behind the developments, of course. We cannot invent what will happen and then make regulation and then give it to the market and say, okay, we'll develop your services or anything. We will always be behind developments. So what I can only say is try and do and give services and build your trust with your customers. I think that's a real good one. And as long as you're I think open or transparent or really create that trust very, very well, then maybe there's not so much we would be against.
Is there much that you are against?
No, I think I have noticed a little bit support the central bank. Because I think what we are doing here is we regard Bitcoin as a payment system. But you can take it from an objective view also as a derivative. So basically when you have an exchange, and for example in Germany there has been now an official statement that Bitcoin gains after 1 year, capital gain tax is free. But this is a speculation. This is like a stock, this is a derivative, this is a call and put option. And therefore the regulation has to jump in, because this is the risk, he said, because you can lose money on that if you're not educated enough. So I think we have to separate the payment system, which is innovative, which never comes out of a regulative or a central bank. They are not, it's not their job to be innovative. That's the job of the banks or of the Bitcoins or the startups. I mean, I can, from my experience with the German regulation, I can just say, regulation is not evil. And all I said in the morning with the panels, you told me, involve them, cooperate with them. This is exactly what we as Bitcoin fans should do. We should get into contact with the regulation and say, why is my payment superior to the other payment? Why is PayPal maybe less risky or higher risky than a Bitcoin payment system? They just evaluate the riskiness of a payment systems, because what do you want? We want to have mass market reach. And with mass market, fraud is upcoming. That's what we know from every payment system. So I think it's the first big success from Bitcoin that regulation is starting to think about Bitcoin. They got already mentioned there. This is a very huge success on that.
I'm not so sure. I'm totally with Tony on the trust issue, and I really want to point out, you may not be aware of it, but on the street, amongst the people, banks and financial regulators are not the very first organizations that trigger trust anymore.
I completely dispute about that, because we are a bank which is exactly founded in the crisis, and we definitely know that the banks did not a very good job, not all of them, but they advised people wrong. And who jumped in? The central bank sometimes, because they try to rule advice rules or something like that. It's not that the banks are trusted. Maybe we have now the license in place, and maybe we have the processes you need to be not so risky. But it's not the thing on the trust. And again, payment is something different than derivatives. This is the only thing I want to emphasize, and I guess nobody is talking about payment there. They are talking about derivatives.
I just want to point out that Bitcoin derives the trust that put people in, and it has gotten trust enough for 1 billion euros that people have put in there so far. That trust is based on the protocol, on mathematics, on algorithms, on open source. Bitcoin does not need privileges from financial regulators or anybody else or banks to give it trust. That is my belief. And also, I think Bitcoin is far more than a payment system, and it is far more than a derivative. It is rather, to me, now the central drumbeat of digitalization. it's maybe the start of a new economic singularity. Anyhow, I don't think we need banks or financial regulators to apply trust to Bitcoin. I would rather believe that we could get a trust problem when we have too many banks and financial regulators in this market.
Thank you, Joerg. There's certainly work for you with microphone. So I really want to give him the final question, and then we can go into the break, and then everybody will have a chance to talk to all of these people personally, and we can have a very large discussion about that.
Yes, hi. I have a question for Michael. You partly answered it already.
Good.
I assume that with your cooperation with Bitcoin DE, you sat down with the Parfian at one table and we're discussing all that. And one of the outcomes is that Bitcoin DE immediately implemented the AML directive. Sitting with these guys at one table, what is your feeling about future developments on the regulatory topic? I mean, where is it going? How do they feel about Bitcoin trading, Bitcoin being a new currency in the market?
I think they're unsecure, as everybody maybe here as well. I followed the text discussion in the morning, and the outcome of the text session was, well, it can go this way, or this way, or up or down. Because nobody really, it's a new approach, and you don't know really how to really regard it. Is this an account unit? Is it a currency? Is it e-money? What is it from a legal perspective? And if it's regarded just a payment system, then there is a payment service directive. And if the Bitcoin payment system is absolutely compliant with that, then they are completely fine. There's nothing changing. If they're regarded as private money in Germany, for instance, Bitcoins are regarded as private money, there's no VAT on it. And so I think it's still for regulative, it's too new. They're sitting there and there's coming something up, and there are coming other currencies as well. And they come in new payment systems are over there, e-money or not. And the problem is, well, still AML. It's always the same. That's why we have implemented these AML laws. And we can't do anything. This is the rule, this is the law. This is by protecting risks or trying to have lowering the risk. And well, we can't do it. But we know that really talking to the regulations and being open, and I find this approach very good. Do you have the right contacts on the Bitcoin network regarding criminals? You need the right contacts, but who's talking with them? And you have to explain it, and you have to really explain it, and I have absolutely no clue where it's going.
Now you have a banking license, which makes it a lot easier for the Euro part. Have there been discussions about an e-money license and Bitcoin trading? Would that be sufficient, or was this part of the discussion?
I'm afraid I'm going to, in the interest of time, have to ask you to repeat that question during the break. I want to thank all our panelists.